All right. Well, welcome to backend pairing. Um, I've been encouraged by the JetBrains IDE folk to adopt that, but I'm not buying any.
Oh, no, no,
Yeah.
no names, Chad.
Exactly.
Oh yeah, that was last week in back end pairing. Chad was like talking about how amazing his ID is.
Oh,
Was it really?
I don't
That's
think
so
that. I
funny.
don't think it was specific to last week.
That's funny.
So, Paul, to fill you in and all our lovely viewers, Marco was asking some questions about seed scripts, which is awesome because can you see previous chat history prior to when you joined the Zoom, Paul?
I can't actually. Yeah.
Can't, right? Let me copy and paste a couple of messages. So I oh, they've kind of smushed together a little bit there, but I've recently created an issue to sort of suggest that we start encouraging like more seed data creation, because I'm sure you find this all the time, Paul, right? Reviewing merge requests, the recreation / validation steps are like, right, go into the Rails console and run these commands and create these models, and then, you know, go here and do this and all this kind of crazy stuff. So there's this kind of ideal scenario, ideal world where every time, first of all, we think of it like our kind of docs firsty type approach. Like every MR, we think, is there documentation to go along this, and is there seed data to go along with this? So, you know,
Yeah.
I'm working on the achievement stuff at the moment, and you know, I should make sure that we've got achievements in the database, user achievements in the database, some revoked achievements, some, you know, a bit of a mixture of data, so that anyone that picks it up today, in the future, a week, a year, a month, you know, can hit the ground running rather than having to spend a bunch of time sort of manually seeding the database.
Cool.
CI is one of the hardest ones I've found, quite frustrating when you're trying to you know, make a little tweak to maybe the pipeline status indicator or something like that, and you've got to set up a whole runner on GDK just to be able to kind of configure the data. And yeah, it'd be nice if the data was already there.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, and it also feels easy to find, because I think that's the other thing too, because we do have like some pipelines seeded, but it's hard to find them.
Yeah.
That's a good point. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and that's already come up actually when we were just chatting, because
Yeah.
Marco can tell you more about the seed data he's putting together, but it's like when you try to make it random by saying like first 8 projects do this, it's not always clear from just reading the code which 8 projects received the data, right? So you have to kind of go into your console, look at your own database state and figure out where you can get a look at this data. So that kind of came up already. But Marco, do you want to describe what you're trying to do to Paul?
Yeah, just really a quick recap. Basically, I'm trying to see the time logs for the time tracking feature so that we don't have always to create them manually. So what I did was to iterate over the first 5 projects inside the database, and then for each one of those, get the list of issues and merge requests, and for each one of those, basically create a time log, a time entry, also randomizing the amount of time spent and the date that the time was spent on. And then we went down the rabbit hole on deciding, should we randomize the first 5 projects, or should we keep a fixed list of projects so we know where to look at, and that kind of stuff. And the most important question, what's the project that you always go to when trying to test stuff? Do you also go to Fly?
This is a no, you shouldn't have told him the answer, Marco. This was a test. This was a test.
It's a personality test. It's like a Rorschach. Like, yeah, what type are you?
What's your go-to project?
I'm the worst. I have my own project I've uploaded, which is my go-to. Yeah,
makes sense. Makes a lot of sense, actually.
So I have the GitLab project that I've uploaded, and I have like GitLab UI project. to test like specific large project stuff.
Awesome.
But yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I do think so. One question about the seeds, and I think you mentioned this a comment about being this word keeps coming up. It came up the first time in like a long time in a call with Jesse. This and
Impotent.
idempotent.
Yeah.
Does this
Definitely
mean
not
that we should be? Does this mean we should be able to run it at any time?
Mm,
So that's interesting because yeah, doing it just based off ID, and if we do this just the, so it sounds like we don't want to depend on previous seeds, right? Or do you want to be able to just run this by itself?
Well, we kind of covered that in so much as that. So we were saying this script's pretty good at the moment because it will look if there are any merge requests and any issuables, issues or merge requests, and for and it will create time logs. But if there aren't any, it will just continue. The only problem is at the moment we need like a guard clause in there really to say if the project's null, to continue, assuming again to sort of say, do we want are we happy that it doesn't create any seed data, or do we
Right.
actually want it to sort of kick off the project seed script almost if there's no projects? But
So even more than projects, my question too is also like, how will I find an issue with time logs? So like that traceability, are we just going to add time logs to every issue?
Time logs.
Time logs. Are we going to add time logs to every issue within these projects, or just with a couple of issues in these projects?
No, to every issue and to every merge request.
Okay.
But going back to your original question about the idempotency of this script, I believe if you were to run this seed script as Marco has it today, it would increase the number of time logs every time you run it, right?
Absolutely.
So it
Yeah.
is not idempotent. I would argue that maybe it should, like, do we want to get into a situation where maybe an issue has like thousands of time logs, right? Because you've run your seeds over and over again.
I quite like the idea that you would be able to increase, like, I'm happy that it works with the random seeding of, a couple of time logs against every issue. Now I want to do a bit of a load test and I want to run this seed script 100 times and see if the report explodes when I do X. I think you've got almost got three ideas. You've got the script explodes if you try and run it and it's already been run before. You've got the script, if you run it a second time, won't it'll almost not run and say, oh, I've already been run, so I don't want to. Maybe even something super crazy that strips out what it put in originally and then starts clean and re-puts it back in to kind of really recreate it. But
so I have an idea for you, Lee and Marco, and I guess everyone else. Sorry. What if instead of this finding issues to attach time logs to, this created the issues it was going to attach time logs to, and that way we could create an issue of like, call it lorem ipsum with time logs. And then if that issue already exists, we know, okay, we've run this, we don't have to do it again or something like that. And that way we may have the idempotent, and like, I think there's a benefit to seeing what happens when there's lots of time logs and seeing what happens when there's not a lot. So it's like, if we do keep running it and then we've just polluted it towards there's always a lot, I don't know.
So, I mean, what a lot of the scripts do, well, platonic, that's getting back to the impotent one now. I don't know what the platonic, there are a number of them, right, that have a flag that you can set to say like how many or something along those lines. So maybe I feel like we're going a bit overboard realistically. Like, what would be nice, I guess, is some best practices if we don't already have them documented and we aren't having a conversation that they are already in the development guides.
Right.
But ultimately, I think AC is better than no seed script. I haven't been able to decide yet whether I think randomness, I went with randomness previously, but I can see a benefit for predictability over randomness as well. So I think, but then I guess the all singing, all dancing would be a script that looks at the environment variables, and you can tell it either how many projects you want to seed for, or how many time logs you want to seed, or in your case, it looks like you were only even going to seed them if you actually set a flag as well. Is that right, Marco?
Oh yeah, I did that always because since I was doing GDK reset data, it was running the seed script every time.
Gotcha. So you potentially weren't going to leave that in there once you're happy with the script.
Yeah.
Okay.
I like where we're at. I think it's good. I don't want to. I'm just so curious because I think you could. This is probably not a good expression. You could skin the cat lots of different ways, but I like,
No, it's perfect.
I can see it's a thank you.
Yeah.
I can see how the existence of it and making it easy to add more of these is gonna triumph. So that sounds cool. So is the seed already built and ready to go?
Basically, yes. If you want, I'm going to share again my screen so that
just give us a demo of the time tracking report while you're there, Marco, and then we can move on to Jesse's.
Yes, but I need to see the data before first.
Well, there's no pressure like the present, right?
Well, let me find, where did I? Yeah, in here. So not the GraphQL one. So this is the
reason for writing the seed script, essentially, right?
Exactly.
Cool.
Right now, the time tracking report is completely empty.
So this is an instance-wide time tracking report?
Hell yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow, that's fancy.
And, well, I did get some feedback that we might.
Yeah.
I guess you had a look.
I haven't read. I saw the email, but I mean, I think you've heard my conversations that I've found that if you've got a self-hosted instance, you pretty much need a single root group, or a lot of functionality just doesn't work anyway. So I'm not too adverse to that as a first iteration anyway, but would be nice if it could be instance wide.
Yeah. So I'm just
undoing anything that we've broken, or
yeah, I think it should work now.
Yeah, that's good to go, right?
If we really wanted to prioritize like running it, not causing it to grow too much, we could just count how many time logs these issues have.
Yeah.
That's probably a really easy way to go about it. But I love it, man. This looks great.
Give us quick show then. While it's
I learned about seed food today, by the way. Sorry.
Nice.
No, you're good.
But you taught us that.
I was going to say, while Marco's working his magic and going to do us a little demo, do you want to introduce us to your fun challenge of the day?
Mine, sure. I suspect mine is pretty straightforward, but you never know. It's just about like overriding code that's EE only. I'm trying to move some logic. See it? Wow.
Whoa.
Beautiful data.
Different dates, different amount of time,
so we can get paid.
Different notes, different projects. Any different users though, Marco?
Yes, the first time that I ran this, I had that version of the script that I always seeded the data to the Flight.js project, but it seeded so much data that I kept going to the next page and I always saw the root user. So I thought that was something wrong with the script.
Hmm,
Great.
interesting. Quick question about this. Yeah, that's fantastic. And then I know, Jesse, you got something. What's going to happen on .com though? So I guess I have to be an admin to go to time logs, but if we did have an admin, is an admin going to?
No. So at the end of the day, it's down to the visibility and the policies of time logs. So if you have got access to a project and can see the time logs, then you would be able to see them on here ultimately.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay.
More than the time logs, you should have access to the issues or the merge requests.
Okay. I'm really
You have
curious about the button, the like run time log report. Is that is
Push
that
the button.
what's going to happen if you do that on .com? That's my big question.
This is really the first MVC.
Got it. Okay.
I mean,
I was anticipating that answer.
it's at the end of the day, it's no different to, you know, we search all issues and all MRs and other things on .com, and it's paginated, right? So
yeah.
I don't think it would explode at all.
I think my concern is necessarily exploding as much as like, because we have customers that are groups within there, and like, are we going to be? I don't know. It just seems maybe strange that there's a view for us. If this is an admin only view, maybe that makes sense. But hopefully we don't. At the very least, hopefully we wouldn't expose any private groups time logs or something like that. Like that.
No. 100% would adhere to policies that are already in place. So
Yeah.
the time log policy, without diving into it, definitely takes into consideration, can you see the issue or merge request? And whether you can see the issue or merge request depends on whether it's confidential, whether the project's private, whether you're a member of the project, etc., etc.
Got it. But performance is like it would be interesting. Like if depending on what the run report does, like that's the other concern. To think
I'm well excited to get it into .com, but also to get it onto self-hosted instances that I've got that are using it like service desk style sort of thing. So yeah, awesome. Thanks for sharing, Marco. And I hope.
I was just trying to see if I could.
I feel like you're hypnotizing me. I feel like this pagination is like, oh, you got to the last page. You did it.
Are you surprised there's only root on there, Marco?
Yes, I was trying to.
We'll leave you with that one, right?
Yeah, definitely.
I also wanted to make sure that nobody else had anything more pressing. Is anyone itching to share something? Okay. Hopefully this one's easy for you all. Share my full desktop. Okay, what have I got going here? So this is just a little cleanup. I was telling Marco I picked this. I have some bigger fish to fry, so I was like, why don't I just do a little refactor for fun? And then of course I got stuck. So it's not a little refactor and it's not fun. Basically, we have some code in lib that should be an EE lib. It's for an enterprise only feature, which is custom roles. Let me show you what I got so far here. How's my size? Is everyone?
Yeah,
can
fine.
Okay.
Perfect.
I've got a big screen, so
and I'm excited if this is something you've been working on recently as well, because I know it's on my radar and Marco's radar and lots of others, and we're looking forward to the frameworks that will be in a position that we or anyone else can kind of pick it up and add additional
custom roles. Yes, that's the fish I have to fry that I'm avoiding by doing this refactor. Okay, so it's a really simple concept, which is that it should be straightforward, which is that we have these methods called node visible to user in lib bonsai reference parser directory. I don't know the first thing about what lib bonsai, but that's fine because I'm just trying to move this code to EE. And looking at this, it's a combination of like overriding something in EE, and then it's also calling super to a base class that's overridden. So this is the code I just commented out. This is what is on master. I have these two methods in different classes that look very similar. And then if you go up to, this doesn't exist on master. If you go up to like the base parser for these non-EE classes, this is what nodes visible to user does. So it actually refines projects, which doesn't seem ideal, right? Because here we're finding projects and then we're preloading these custom roles.
Yeah.
And then we super app and I don't know what this lazy thing does, but I think we're finding projects again and then doing some other stuff. So we need to preload before it gets to line 81 here, because that is what calls the permission that is a custom role permission.
I guess,
So
yeah, I guess the preload actually does it, but I was wondering if the lazy basically prevents it from actually executing until it gets into the super and then gets to one of the following lines.
yeah, does anyone here like just know how lazy works? I don't know how this thing works.
Usually lazy is used to not load the stuff until you really need to.
But then if you look at the next line, it's preload member roles for projects. So at that point, I think it's going to execute the lazy thing anyway.
And does it memwise? Does lazy memwise the thing?
Seems like it.
Oh, maybe.
Is it just strong memoize?
Yield
Or
for
that's, yeah.
Oh wait,
There's
that's
no
if you do it
for-
then. If you go back to the lazy one, and if we go to if we do an initialize the proc block,
Blocks, and lambdas, always my favorite chapter of every Ruby book. Yeah.
force evaluation of possible.
Case value. Yeah, I don't even think that force is being called in this context. It's just calling lazy and then passing a block.
One last question. What are all the, and what are the references to proc in that class?
What are the references to proc? Oops. If there's force, it calls
just those.
Call. Just that. Yeah.
Okay, so I guess force is the only thing that calls it.
Are you in the GraphQL lazy, or is there? I think there's more than one lazy class.
Oh, it's possible. Yeah, good call.
Uh-oh.
Lib GitLab. My C tags are like super unreliable. Another reason to use an IDE.
I was about to say insert sponsor for JetBrains.
Very good call. That was okay. So I know our sponsors, JetBrains, would like to remind everybody that they make a great IDE. You want to check it out. So this is the real lazy. The real lazy is here.
So it evaluates and then it responds to the result, and will evaluate memwise.
I guess.
I guess that's what the result is doing.
What here is memoizing?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you probably know better than I, but I think could we, from the Rails console, could we call this, and we because it normally spits out the SQL as it goes, right? So we can kind of see what it's doing and when it's doing it.
That's a good idea.
Are you talking for the base parser or for the lazy?
So I'm thinking, what would be the best?
I think you're thinking. Are you thinking just that block?
Yeah, potentially, but I don't know the best way to kind of run that in its relevant scope with its relevant includes, etc. If that makes sense.
I mean, it looks like the way that it's defined. So you've got on the upper right, you've got projects, and then you set it to that lazy thing. And so we do end up using projects on the next line. We do projects.values. So it will get evaluated if there is a user. But then when we go to super, we essentially run kind of the same thing. So it will get reevaluated and reassigned. But if for some reason that line 37 on the other class didn't get run, then projects would never have gotten evaluated. So it is duplicating it. There's probably a way to get around that.
And that's what I would like to do.
If there's a user.
Yes, yes. But I would like to get around that. And I mean, the other thing complicating this is that there are other classes that inherit from base parser, right? So I'm not wanting to like change. I can't remove projects from here, because at first I was like, oh, I'll just remove this line, right? And then I'm only evaluating it once, but there are other classes that inherit from base parser that don't override this method. So I want to keep the behavior of this method the same.
Could you, maybe this is a stupid solution, but pass project as a parameter and only try to load them if the parameter is not defined?
A parameter to which method? To nodes visible to user?
Like an optional one on 73. That kind of makes sense.
It would be this.
Does that work if you were to call super with a parameter like that?
I think so.
Yeah.
You would call super by passing the projects that you just loaded so that the base class doesn't load them again.
I guess you'd have to pass user and nodes as well, right? Whereas here it's implicitly passed, I guess.
Yeah.
Worth grepping our repo to see if we do that. That does look right.
I think, yeah, that's probably the smallest amount of change. I would just null it here.
Yeah, I would null it there as well.
You do null, okay.
And then on 74, you only say if projects.nil or something at the end of the line.
Can you do the projects or equal thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, that should work.
That thing.
Nice.
Okay. And then so then in here.
That should do it, really.
No, you need to update the nodes visible to user also on the upper right corner to have the project.
Yes, because then we're not necessarily overwriting it. So we would, I see what you're saying, because
the method definition has to be the same.
I don't know if that's a good question. I don't think you have to.
In a type safe language, you do.
Yeah, I know, but that's not what we're at.
Try it as it is, I guess, and see what happens.
So try to add.
The difference is there's one difference. If you instantiate the derived class and you pass the project, you're going to skip the derived class method and call the one on the base class.
If you call if
you provide the project argument.
Is that really, because I think Ruby is only going to look based off the name of the function. I don't think it identifies, like you can't have argument overloads in Ruby, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, okay. That's another point of view.
So I don't know. And the other idea though is rather than passing in projects is maybe passing in a flag to do that the preload member roles as like, when do we do that? And then just commit parser. Like maybe that's even just a member, I forgot what they're called. A property for like, I don't know, that we can just set and initialize or something, like commit parser needs to preload project stuff, and then we check that here. Like we may be able to decouple it from the function argument as well, but
yes. So instead of passing a collection, just pass a Boolean that tells us if we want to load the collection. But then how would we get access to projects in the base class if we weren't passing it through? We wouldn't have access. It's not like an instance variable. It's like not.
So since the lazy is all the same, it's just that like line 20, we would pass a flag for of like, should we, preload roles for projects, true or false? And then if that's true, then we just do that. in the base class. I mean, that's not cohesive because we're passing flags to change as opposed to, I mean, it does hint that there's something code smelling.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
so correct me if I'm wrong though too. So even with EE overrides like this base parser, so that's really interesting. So the EE base parser is also doing the preload member roles for projects thing.
Well, and I added this. Let me see if I can find, like, I am the one that caused this problem that I'm refactoring. Not surprisingly.
Okay.
So where is it? Here's where I did it. I was just looking at this. I was like, who did this? And it's like, it's me. I had some N+1 specs failing for this class, so I just added this. So actually, because I'm now trying to remove this to EE, my plan is to remove this method entirely and then make this call in an EE version of commit range parser, which currently does not exist, right? So, and this is where the EE override stuff kind of trips me up, because I'm going to create an EE version of commit range parser, but it's going to have a base class, an EE base class, and then there's also like a non-EE base class that it inherits from. Like when you call super on an EE class that has a parent, what does it call first? Its base class or its non-EE counterpart?
It'll call the EE method, and then super is going to call the CE method. But it's strange because what I think the strangest thing is that these behave like mixins. They don't really behave like extensions. Yet somehow we can still call this super of it, which is I think is some of the EE magic that we're doing. But that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I would say let's start by creating the EE commit range parser.
Yeah. And then that will include this, and then I'll call super and I'll pass in the projects to super so that we don't do the lookup again. Okay, that's the piece that was missing for me before. I hadn't considered that. I was like, oh, should I don't know. I was like, should I define a method that one of them calls preload and one of them doesn't, like an empty method in CE or something? I've seen that pattern a few times. We do have pretty good documentation on EE, how to do EE stuff, but it's also a lot of documentation, so it's like hard to always find exactly what you're looking for.
I think code and lib, if we go to code and lib, might be the.
Yeah, I looked at that. It's pretty short.
Space, just for example, if CE has LDAP classes, EE specific classes. I think you just put it there, and then you got to find like the example for the prepend thing.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I actually just added that. If you look at, oops, that's not exist. I added, where are you? I added this prepend mod actually. So there was already a base parser in EE lib.
Oh, nice.
This, but it didn't. But the CE version didn't have this guy. How does, when that's missing, does that mean it's like not?
That's really interesting. So what this can mean, so here's something that might be going on there. I feel like Steve Abrams is going to be able to correct me so much on this, but it's possible that the EE base parser is like an EE specific one that we don't necessarily want to overwrite into CE. So we have EE specific code, which we won't do the whole prepend mod with. That's the reason why I would think that that's not existing.
Okay.
Because I guess the way I'm thinking about it is the base parser, where no one's going to initialize base. It's kind of like an abstract class, I guess. And so I'm assuming we have other parsers. And so I'm assuming we have a collection of CE specific parsers. And then it sounds like we must have a collection of EE specific only parsers. And the way like Bonsai works is I guess we just run through a list of all these parsers to.
Steve, do you know the answer?
So wait, what? I'm confused.
Okay, yeah, I'm
What's, I mean, I think the way I think about the EE stuff is pretty much like when we put the code together, the EE file and the regular CE file are combined. So you can imagine them being like one file essentially. So when you're running EE, you can just imagine that you would just have one file. Anything that was overridden in EE kind of just like takes over. And then inheritance just works as you would expect. So if there's a base parser, then and there's not one in EE, then you can imagine that the EE and the CE class that are inheriting from it will both call super on that CE version of the base parser. Does that make sense? So you don't need the EE override if you're not actually overriding a specific thing.
But we are, I think in this case, I mean, this, sorry, because of my, let me just like stash everything for a second.
And I might have gotten a little lost on which things are
Yeah,
where.
there's a lot of, the letter E is showing up a lot in this conversation. It's like EECE. So this is how it is on master. It just, there's a comment that says this is an override, but there's no like prepend mod with on the bonsai.
this is years
Base
old. It might not
parser.
even be, I mean, this might actually not even be loaded,
It might be,
specific override.
yeah. Yeah, like basically, is
Yeah.
this a no op right now? Is this just ghost code on the left? Because it's not, there's no override in the CE version.
Yeah, that's my guess. It doesn't look like that's in use at all.
Cool, got a ghost. Okay.
I mean, if we delete it and it throws a fit, we'll know very quickly that we do actually need it.
This is one of those times when you're like, kind of like type safety.
Right. We'll write a test. The test will tell us the truth.
Okay.
So yeah, so it sounds like if so then going back though to the original problem is commit parser has a problem, right? Is it commit parser that has a problem?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't like to criticize commit parser like that, but yes.
Does commit parser have opportunity for growth?
Yes. Constructive commit parser is looking for constructive feedback. Now I like don't remember anything about how the world works, but I believe that nodes can what is the message that I'm trying to reload? Now I've completely forgotten where I was. Let's see, git diff. Oh my goodness. Forward. Nodes visible to user, that's the one. So nodes visible to user is, I've deleted it from here because I'm going, but in theory, this basically nothing should be doing preload custom roles if it's not in EE, because custom roles is an EE only feature. So I'm just trying to remove any references to custom roles from non-EE code. I think the answer is going to be making this EE base parser actually override the CE base parser and then kind of go from there.
So my question then is that load member roles thing, is that a commit reference specific thing, or is that something that's any EE parser we would want? So that was my confusion, was why are we targeting base parser versus making an EE specific for just commit parser?
I see. Yeah, I think it will be, well, okay, two-part answer. It's not specific, it is specific to that. So nodes visible to user is present in the API of every reference parser class. For example, I just picked a random one, nodes visible to user. So this is doing something. We only need to do this custom roles preloading if the authorization check is for read code. So this is read group. So there's no need to preload custom roles because read group isn't part of custom roles right now, but read code is part of custom roles. So if we're gonna say can read code somewhere, I'm gonna have to do that preload. So I don't want it to be for every single of these, one of these reference parser classes, just for the ones that do that authorization check.
I see.
Am I
That's
being
And
interesting.
that's only on EE.
And that,
Okay.
well, that permission check happens in non-EE code, that the only in an EE instance would that a custom role affect that.
That's really interesting. So,
Yeah,
so the type of parser controls whether or not we want to do the preload too.
exactly. Yeah. So commit range parser here. This does download code. So I actually don't even care about that because I'm only worried about read code. So actually, this is funny. This is like from a previous time. So I only care about read code, not download code. But I assume some of these ag read code lib bonsai. Maybe I can remove this. Wow, did I just discover that I don't have to do any of this?
Oh,
I think
yeah.
I did. Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, I think I have a plan. I'll send you all the MR. This will just take me 20 minutes to figure out later. Now that I've gotten my base approach planned. So thank you. Thank you very much.
What did you just discover?
I discovered that we were preloading. So, and this is something that only I could know, but when we first built custom roles, the very first iteration was actually adding a different permission. It was adding download code. And then we got feedback that actually like, no, the customers just want read code. And I was like, what's the difference between reading code and downloading code? Like anything you can read, you can download, right? But it was determined that they would prefer to like not have the download button, not have the clone option available. Like they can load the repo and look at the files. So this new permission was added. They split out read code from download code so that there's this like ability just to look at a repository. And if you really wanted to, you could copy the HTML on every page, but you know, that we're not making it easy for you to download the code. And so we switched from download code to read code for our customer MVC. And so I wrote this preloading logic when it was download code, and I was getting all these N+1 errors for download code. And what I just discovered or just realized is that like actually it's a different permission now. So I can just remove the preloading.
Oh, nice. Wow. Well, that's fantastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
The easiest way to solve a problem is to remove the problem.
Exactly. So this was
well.
great.
So while we're here, though, we did just come across potentially a bit of technical debt because it's unclear if that if we came across dead code, ghosted code.
Yeah.
Do you happen to have the GDK running?
Yeah. Well,
Can we see if
let me
it's
see.
if it's definitely dead code? Can we raise an exception and try to trigger it?
Yeah. I'm happy to do that. Oh, that's a different screen. Hold on.
If you don't have
My
the GDK
GDK
running,
is-
I know Marco does.
Yeah,
But I
that's
don't have
true.
If you just stopped it, Marco, I'm going to be a little upset.
No, I don't have any license on my GDK, so
Oh, that's interesting.
Oh, you wouldn't.
What's
have an
actually fascinating though is you don't
EE.
need to have the license for the EE code to run, right? Steve,
that's
because
true. We could also bypass that, but
yeah.
Mine is booting. I just restarted it. I haven't loaded
Okay.
it since yesterday. I'm happy to stash whatever I have going and just remove that file. That's it. Or you want to raise in there? Or
I'll
you
say
want to remove it?
if we remove it, then we would remove the custom logic. I want to see if that custom logic is even being hit. So let's raise it. And I think what hits this is if you leave a comment is when bonsai is a markdown rendering thing. So I think leaving a comment with a commit reference or something like that would do it.
Okay. I'm just running some migrations. And so I'm gonna do like a raise. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let's see how long this takes to run these migrations. You can do it, little guy.
I
okay.
got a question. Oh, what were you gonna say, Jesse?
I would just say, like, do you all come in and just like run migrations every morning? I feel like I need some kind of like I woke up script that runs migrations, so I don't have to do it manually.
I've had mixed habits over the years. But yeah, generally.
I
You do
only
it
update.
manually.
I use GDK update once a week.
Mm,
Yeah, I used to do GDK update not nearly as much as I should have, and I would just do a pull rebase and then run migrations and bundle install on just the GitLab project.
Mm.
But then that turned into every time I did a GDK update, it didn't go very well. So I ended up doing like I would do GDK update like once a week, and then now I'm on infrastructure now, so I don't use GDK as much. So I just do it anytime I use it now.
I'm always surprised people who run GDK update regularly because it always takes a long time for me. But it's
Yeah.
because they don't run it so often. So I don't know.
I know some people have like a good habit of like they get on and they just like start it and then they're like checking their to-dos while it's running. But
Mhm.
Well,
Yeah.
that takes like discipline, which
I usually run GDK update while I'm cooking because I since I work on GitLab stuff on my lunch break mostly, so while I cook my lunch, I also update my GDK.
That's pretty good.
Gosh,
That's a good idea.
really good. Also, you cook lunch? That's like a pretty advanced sounding lunch to me.
I feel like
Okay,
GDK has gotten a lot more stable like over the last year and a half.
Mm.
Because I remember like I used to be afraid to run it if I had like a lot of work to do. Like if I was like, I need to get some work done today, I can't do a GDK update. I can't afford to lose an hour debugging something. And but now that doesn't seem to happen anymore.
It still randomly does. It still randomly does things that leave side effects on my computer at times. So like I think most recently with the Rails 3 upgrade, it did just a broad brew update of all my brew stuff. And for me, it broke my tmux because I guess tmux had a breaking change in one of their later versions. And so this was really frustrating to me because it's like, okay, now all of a sudden things that are completely unrelated to the GDK are broken for me.
There's actually an issue on the GDK project opened by one of the community members that wanted to mention somewhere that GDK is not only going to work on the GDK stuff, but also on the system wide.
Yeah. It's interesting. If you try to let's put a commit reference, or like an MR reference or an reference or anything like that. Like doing the bang one or whatever.
okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I know how to do that. You can do this.
Yeah. Or if you do just the incrementing ID. And that wasn't talking about with the commit. I was just talking about with the, you can also any kind of reference because we targeted the base class. So this seems like it's all working. Can we try then? Let's just double check that raises like we expect it to. Can we raise on the CE class, the nodes user can reference thing?
Yeah. Base parser. Okay, and then nodes user can reference.
All right, I'm gonna try to see a little more where this thing actually gets called. It gets called in gather references.
It does seem like this is thinking really hard.
Uh-oh.
It's failing in such a nice way.
Did it fail?
Oh, I should have, but I should have written a custom error message. Silly me. Just to be sure.
Well, it looks like the E is not even being used. So I think we can get rid of it.
Oh my gosh. Time well spent.
Oh yeah.
If we just remove one file from GitLab every week during backend pairing. Eventually, it'll be the perfect app.
Yeah, I think there's a strong argument we can put this under feature enhancement
Mhm.
or maintenance.
Workflow enhancement.
Yeah.
The
Can you-
question I have is, can we do like Git pairing? Can you do a Git pair commit?
Oh yeah, you can co-author it. Is that what you're
How
talking
do you
about?
do that?
I think
Yeah.
you can. I think author is the. I'm gonna double check.
Yeah, I always forget how to do it.
You know what? I'm actually gonna ask ChatGPT.
It's like in the commit message.
It should be co-authored by or something like that. And then column and the username.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, co
Um,
by as a trailer. Yes, yes, that's right. That's totally right. This is Chat GPT's example.
Is it in the comments of the Zoom?
Of the zone. Yeah.
Of the Zoom? Okay, let me see. Where is the Zoom?
Oh
Nope.
yeah, the zone.
Did you subscribe to ChatGPT because you're always using it? No? And
No,
you get
I haven't needed to yet. I do have a hypothesis about Chat GPT because I started using it, I want to say like the end of November. And I was really blown away with its answers. My experience with the profoundness of its answers has kind of tapered. So I don't know if it's because I'm now more used to it, or I have a theory that with how much it's scaled, they had to shallow the depth that they're running it in. And in addition to making it handle all the requests, I think part of that, clearly, I think it's running at a different depth than it used to.
Mm.
All that to say is that would be interesting to me if you subscribed and there was maybe some sort of improvement on the depth of the answer, not just the speed. Subscription only promises like an increase of speed, which I find to be interesting.
Mm.
Yeah. Cool. Well, so we can remove that file. That's all we got to do.
Yeah, that's all we got to
Nice.
do. I just had to find everybody's email addresses, so I took a screen share, so I'm not like showing the whole of my
That's okay.
calendar.
I think it's all
There's
public,
something
actually.
doing there.
I think.
Well,
It's-
to you it is, but not to the internet that's going to eventually have this video.
we work at GitLab. Everything's kind of public to the internet.
We don't work for GitLab. I don't work for GitLab, so my stuff is not public.
Oh, this is true, Marco. But it's like the emails and all the commit. It's in the commit messages, right?
Should be, yeah.
Yeah. So the commit message is public. So then email is public.
Yeah.
But you can sign commits like a GPG key instead. You don't have to have your email in your.
You
Or
don't have
you
to
can
have-
definitely. Well, I know on GitHub you don't have to have it because I worked in a job where we weren't allowed to, and so I can't remember how we got around that, but it just showed your username. It didn't show your email.
That's interesting. Let me see if I do a git log.
I'm curious. No, I want to look at like my open source contribution that I made on GitHub recently.
Yeah, I think by default it's there, especially if your git config has it locally. But there's a setting where I think if your email and your git config matches your GitHub username, it will mask on github.com your email for your username.
Okay. Yeah, if I did git log, every commit has an email for the corresponding author. So far, not every. Again, let me clarify. Just at the top 5.
Okay.
That clearly applies every. Cool. All right. Well, I know we're pretty close to time. Does anyone else have anything else that they would like to? I know that's about it. I have a question about the seed stuff, and then we can maybe close it. Because I noticed, so the desire was yeah, overall, it'd be great if we can have more seed data, especially for some of these features that are hard to get to that state. One, I guess it'd be really great. I need to find the actual documentation for it, but I noticed that we have these incrementing by integer. And I can see it
Hmm.
being really possible if we really want to encourage more developers to adding seeds. We end up with two MRs with the new, incremented integer, 38 seed foo, 38 seed bar. They in parallel both pass review and get merged.
True.
Is there anything preventing us from maybe making these by dates? Do we see that being a helpful?
Oh.
Possibly yes, but I wonder why there are some seeds that are so high in number. I guess they use the integer at the beginning to know the order that they have to apply the seeds.
Mhm.
That's tough.
There's probably some specific, like, I mean, yeah, it's probably like most new things probably don't matter. They just can come at the end, but there's probably some where it's like, issues have to come after something.
Yeah,
even if
because
they're older.
the first scripts are setting up the very basic stuff. So the admin user, the other users, projects, issues, labels. So yeah, I think that the number actually tells you the order of execution.
So is it problematic if two that are actually totally fine run next to each other, but we end up with like two 38s or something? Like,
No, they'll just end up running alphabetical after that, essentially.
and that
Yeah.
sounds
Which, I
probably
mean,
fine, right?
Not great, but
Yeah. I guess it would just throw off.
I do think we should, like, I feel like there's a lot of non-visibility around seeding because it's something that I definitely wasn't aware of at first, and then spent a lot of time trying to like advocate my team to spend time on. And it was kind of like, well, we've already got the feature and everyone on the team has data seeded, so it wasn't prioritized. And I think that's common at GitLab, is that certain things like that don't get noticed until they're really, really needed.
Yeah, I just posted a link to an issue that Lee opened about encouraging data seeding.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I want to. I know I spend too much time manually creating the thing. When if I was just a little smarter, I feel like I'd be able to automate it. But it's so easy not to get there when you're already solving a different problem.
Well, when I added pagination to time logs, I had to create more than 100 time logs.
I know you've already like you did things the right way. I have like opened a Rails console and it's like, okay, I'm just going to create this one-off.
No, the first time when I added the pagination, I did that.
I know, but then you took it the next step. Like you did it the right way.
Yeah,
because I had to reset my database and I didn't want to do it again.
That's so good. That's so good.
never reset your database.
I reset it 3 times today already.
Wow.
That's along with the GDK update. That's the other thing. I like my structure SQL is just like always a mess, and it's just every time I run migrations, I just check out that file again and ignore it.
Oh yeah. Every
yeah.
time you run migrations, the structure.sql gets messed up.
I know there's a way to like get it in sync, but it's another one of those like
But I wonder why
too
they're
lazy
not.
for it. It's essentially anytime you develop migrations locally, it's because there's so many commits going through, it's likely to end up out of order with things that you pull in, and that's what ends up kind of like building onto itself.
Oh. Too many migrations.
Really? Like, well, I've noticed like if you check out master and you run migrations, it's always different. It never.
I know there's also aspects where depending on your local config with Postgres, like it could order things very slightly differently. But yeah, my main understanding was like if you run a migration locally and then forget to roll it back before pulling and executing migrations from master, that's like the most common reason that it'll get out of sync.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks for hopping on. Thanks Jesse for sharing that's an interesting part of the code base where we're EE specific extending, but then it was all dead code. So that was,
It was all dead
what
code.
a
Maybe that's
happy-
why I was so confused.
that's kind of like the horror film twist is like, he was dead the whole time, but it's actually like a happy ending for code. Like the code was dead the whole time. So it's, yeah. That was cool.
Heartwarming. Very heartwarming.
Right. Thanks everybody. I'll see you later.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.